It started over dinner, not an argument, not raised voices, not even the slam of a wine glass. Just silence, the heavy kind that descends when everyone at the table already knows something you don't. I should have noticed the signs. Mom's table set with the good china, the candles flickering even though it was still light outside, the faint smell of over-sweet wine. She only brought out when she wanted to impress Callista, floated into the room in some gauzy cream dress, her makeup flawless as always. She smiled like she was already being celebrated, and maybe she was. I took the empty seat across from her and adjusted the sleeve of my worn cardigan. No one asked how my job was going, or if I'd finished the grant proposal I'd been buried in for weeks. No one asked about the fixer-upper. I'd quietly purchased a $900 house with broken windows and a sunken porch. But they didn't know yet, I told myself. They didn't ask because they didn't know, but they did, and they were waiting. Mom began talking about Callista's upcoming retreat in Sedona, describing it like a pilgrimage. "It's not just a getaway, sweetie," she said, eyes gleaming. "It's healing. $15,000 for 7 days is a small price for someone doing the kind of work your sister's doing. Energy work, spiritual guidance, generational trauma release." I swallowed a dry piece of roast and nodded faintly. Then Dad turned to me casual but pointed. "Rowena, you said you were transferring the funds last week. What's the delay?" I set down my fork. "I didn't transfer the money." Silence. Callista froze mid-sip, her green juice glass pausing just before her lips. Mom blinked once. Slow, disappointed. Dad's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room dropped a few degrees. "What do you mean you didn't transfer it?" he asked. "I used the money. I said I bought a house." "A house?" Mom repeated like it was a foreign word. "You mean a condo?" "No," I said, voice steady. "A house. It's not much. It was listed at $900, but it's mine." Laughter broke from Callista's throat, sharp and shiny. "You bought a dump instead of helping me reset? That is so on brand for you." "I never agreed to fund your retreat," I said. "You didn't say no either," Mom snapped. I didn't know silence was considered consent. Dad's fork hit the plate with a quiet clink. "You spent your savings on yourself?" "I spent my savings on something I can grow into, something I can build." I thought that was the point. "You've clearly chosen poverty," Mom said. "Don't expect us to support your delusions." "I wasn't asking," I said, just informing. "Then be on your own completely," Dad said, cold and final. "No group chats, no family plans, no Easter." And just like that, I was exiled. The next morning, I woke to find myself removed from the family group chat. My name erased from the shared calendar. A message from Mom arrived hours later. "Please don't come to Easter. It's better for Callista's emotional safety." I didn't reply. 3 days later, I loaded everything I owned into the back of my ancient Subaru and drove 3 hours out of Denver into the mountains of southern Colorado. The house was worse than the listing had shown. Sagging roof-boarded windows, weeds that had colonized the porch like they owned it. But it was mine, my decision, my mess to clean. I parked in the gravel and sat for a moment, letting the silence swallow the last of the city noise. The air was sharp with pine and damp earth. For the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't feel watched or measured or ranked. I walked up the steps, the wood groaning under my boots, and pushed open the door. Dust spilled out like memory. Inside, the walls were faded green, the kind of green that had given up trying to be cheerful. A single bulb hung crooked from the ceiling. It flickered as if unsure whether to welcome me or warn me. I began to unpack in silence. A fold-up chair, a single mattress, 1 box of books, my old laptop. And at the very bottom of my bag, a mason jar with $24 in coins saved from years of never using cash. As I swept through the back room, clearing out a pile of old blankets and yellowed newspapers, something caught my eye, an envelope wedged between the floorboards. I pulled it free. The paper was thin, the ink faded, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Aunt Corinne. We hadn't spoken much since she moved to Oregon, but she'd always seen me, really seen me. She was the only one who ever came to my school plays, the only one who sent birthday cards without Callista's name attached. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single card. No date, just 3 lines in her familiar looping script. You always had the light. Don't let them dim it. Love always. Aunt Corinne. I sat down hard on the dusty floor, gripping the card in both hands. Tears welled but didn't fall. It wasn't sadness, not exactly. It was recognition. It was a reminder that I hadn't imagined the neglect, that someone else had noticed it too. I propped the card against the windowsill. Sunlight streamed through the cracked pane, touching the ink like it wanted to make it permanent. By evening, I'd managed to hang a curtain, an old floral sheet from my college apartment, and set up my chair by the fireplace that didn't work. I lit a candle and watched the shadows flicker across the walls. I wasn't lonely. I was alone. There's a difference. The house creaked and settled as night pulled itself around me. I sat in the dim light card, still in my lap, and thought of all the ways I'd been erased. Birthday cakes with my name misspelled, awards never acknowledged. Silence in the face of my effort, but I was still here. I looked out the broken window to the world beyond the sagging porch and whispered, if they erased me from their story, maybe it's time I write mine from scratch. And this time, no one else gets to hold the pen. The message came on a gray morning, the kind where the clouds hang too low and everything feels a little too quiet. I was sitting on the floor of the kitchen, if it could be called that, cross-legged on cold linoleum, drinking instant coffee from a chipped mug I'd found in the free bin behind the thrift store. My phone buzzed once. Just once I picked it up, not expecting anything important. Do not come to Easter, Ma. No, hello, no explanation, no love. Just the digital equivalent of a locked door. I stared at the screen for a long time, not surprised. Not hurt, not exactly. Just hollow, like I had walked into a room I used to live in, only to find it redecorated, repainted, and my name scraped off the doorframe. I placed the phone face down and took another sip of coffee, bitterness curling in my mouth. Outside, the wind rattled one of the loose shutters, and the sky hung heavy like it wanted to press the whole house flat. The radiator still wasn't working. I'd tried 3 YouTube tutorials the night before, but something inside the pipes was too rusted to cooperate. Still, it was mine. In the silence, memories crept in like cold air through the cracks in the window frame. My 16th birthday, when Mom brought out a cake with pink icing and 10 candles, not 16. 10. They had spelled my name wrong. Happy birthday. Rowena, 1 too many N's. Callista laughed and said it gave the cake vintage charm. No one bothered to fix it. I remembered the Florida trip, the one where there wasn't enough space in the car. I was 28. I had offered to drive separately, even book my own motel. They said no. The energy wouldn't feel right. Callista needed calm. I needed to be quiet. That was the pattern. My existence tolerated as long as it didn't ask for attention. I stood up, knees stiff, and walked toward the back room where I'd piled boxes from the car. The air smelled of mildew and something older, like wet wallpaper, and a house that had forgotten what warmth felt like. Still, I unpacked books, blankets. The curtain I'd hung last night fluttered slightly in the wind, sneaking through the cracked window pane. Then later that afternoon, something snapped. It was Callista's voice, echoing from my phone speakers. "Hey, beautiful souls," she said in that syrupy tone that made her followers melt, "so I'm doing something really meaningful today. I wanted to share my sister's journey with you all. She's been through so much. A lot of pain, a lot of trauma. She was filming live streaming from my port. I froze. I hadn't heard her knock. She wasn't even in front of the door. She was standing sideways by the steps, angling the camera to capture the flaking paint. The overgrown weeds, the mailbox hanging by a single nail. She bought this place for $900, Callista said, like she was unveiling an exhibit at a museum. Isn't that wild? I mean, it's unlivable, but it's her way of rebuilding. So I thought, why not help her the way family should? I watched as she walked along the side of the house, narrating my life to strangers. Some people just don't ask for help, she continued. So I'm asking for her. I set up a little fundraiser. Anything helps. I clicked the link in her bio. GoFundMe help my sister rebuild. Her face was in the thumbnail, not mine. Raised $18,340 recipient. Callista Vale business caption. She won't ask for help, but I know she needs it. Let's lift her up. I didn't know whether to scream or laugh. I hadn't consented to this. I hadn't even known it existed. And the worst part wasn't the lies. It was the comments. She's lucky to have you. You're such a good sister. Poor girl. Hope she gets her dignity back. I clicked through every photo, some taken from public posts years ago. Some clearly from yesterday. Me hauling trash bags, me kneeling by a broken porch step, me blurred in the background with slumped shoulders. They made me into a con. I turned off the phone and sat very still. I must have stayed like that for hours. At some point the sun set. I didn't turn on the flashlight. I didn't eat dinner. I just let the dark wrap around me, letting the silence pulse louder than her voice ever could, until a notification broke the stillness. New message request at Elsie Kojuris. I clicked, expecting another stranger asking if I needed donations. Instead it read, "Hey, I saw the GoFundMe. You didn't authorize that, did you? I'm a paralegal, Colorado bar certified. This looks like civil exploitation, possibly wire fraud, depending on how it's framed. Want help documenting?" I blinked. My hands trembled, but not from fear. Something colder, sharper. I typed one word, "yeah." Elsie replied instantly. "Start with screen recordings. Capture timestamps. Save all comment threads. Don't confront her, not yet. Trust me." That night I didn't cry. I didn't rant. I opened my laptop, created a new folder, named it Phoenix. I began recording, saving, labeling files by hour. By platform, I downloaded every live stream Callista had ever done. Mentioning my broken-hearted sister, I documented the GoFundMe edits, screenshotted every lie. I pulled up the PayPal transaction ID that showed the donations being routed to her retreat business. Each click was quieter than anger, louder than any scream. This wasn't about revenge. Not yet. This was about truth and consequences. I leaned back in the cold wooden chair I'd dragged from the garage. The only light in the room came from the laptop screen. My reflection stared back at me, tired, pale, determined. This wouldn't be war. This would be bookkeeping. With Bloodline, tomorrow I'd reach out to the GoFundMe support team. I'd prepare statements. I'd ask Elsie how far this could go legally. But tonight, I let the weight of it all settle. My family hadn't just erased me. They had sold the pieces they left behind. And Callista. She hadn't even asked if I was okay. She didn't want a sister. She wanted a story. I would give her one. Just not the one she scripted. I was dusting the windowsill when I heard a knock at the door, sharp, rehearsed, too confident to be a neighbor. I opened it to find Callista standing on the porch in an ivory trench coat, her hair in soft waves, face delicately made up to appear undone. But beneath the filtered grace, her jaw was tight. "I just need a place to crash for a few days," she said quickly, stepping one foot inside before I had a chance to say yes or no. There was a pipe burst at the spa retreat. Total disaster. Mold inspection. You know how it is. No, I didn't. Still, I let her in. She walked past me like the house owed her something, eyes scanning the walls and floor like a set designer taking mental notes. "Oh," she murmured. "This place has charm." It wasn't the first time Callista had turned judgment into poetry. Over the next 24 hours, she made herself strangely comfortable. She claimed the kitchen table, rearranged my curtains for light flow, and took long calls in a sing-song voice from the bathroom, likely updating sponsors or followers. I watched silently. I wasn't ready to confront yet. But by day, 3 things shifted. I woke to find her already up, dressed in a flowy linen jumpsuit, lighting candles in the corner of the kitchen. A ring light was set up near the back window. My chipped countertop had been cleared to display oat milk, lavender, essential oils, and a handmade journal she'd never written in. I stood in the hallway, unseen, as she hit record on her phone. "Hey, my beautiful healing circle," Callista cooed into the camera. "I wanted to bring you somewhere raw. My sister's been struggling. She's in a really dark place emotionally right now. And this? She gestured around the room. This is her home. She turned the camera briefly toward the cracks in the wall. The peeling paint, my life, my sanctuary, my recovery, reduced to a prop. Then she said it. I'm hoping to raise a little extra so I can stay close and help her rebuild. She deserves it, even if she can't see it yet. My chest tightened, but I didn't move, not yet. That afternoon, I opened the GoFundMe link she'd included in her bio. Help my sister rebuild my photo, me crouching in the garden. Sweat on my brow mid-repair was plastered on the banner. Caption, she doesn't know I'm doing this, but love moves first. The total $19,763, all listed to Callista's business PayPal account. I didn't scream, I didn't slam doors, I waited. That evening, I stood at the edge of the kitchen while she adjusted the angle on the ring light, talking to the lens again. Some people aren't ready to ask for help, so I'm asking for them. I stepped forward quietly, reached out, and slowly, without a word, removed the phone from her tripod. The screen still streamed. Thousands were watching. I turned the camera to face myself. My sister doesn't get to script my suffering anymore. I handed the phone back. Callista's face fell. For the first time, there was no smirk, just silence. She packed her bags in under 10 minutes, her departure louder than her arrival. The door slammed, echoing through the hollow frame like a final note. That night, I sat by the window and opened my laptop. A message pinged from Elsie. We have enough time to file. I created a new folder, Phoenix, and began saving everything. Not for drama, not for revenge. For truth with consequences. The lights in the Grand Pavilion Ballroom of the LA Marriott shimmered like champagne. Golden uplighting danced across the walls. Strings of eucalyptus and cream-colored roses hung from archways, and a soft instrumental version, of You Raise Me Up, drifted through the sound system. Callista stood at center stage, glowing in a cream silk gown. Palms lifted in gratitude. Welcome to the first annual Callista Cares Healing Families Summit. She smiled as cameras flashed her signature tone of vulnerable optimism, woven through every syllable. Tonight, we're not just raising money, we're raising vibrations. Rowena watched from her laptop in her half-renovated kitchen, where a chipped mug steamed with chamomile and a single yellow sticky note was pinned to the window frame. You always had the light, Aunt Corinne. Next to her, Elsie was calm, composed a finger hovering above the keyboard. 5 minutes until the packet's scheduled to land. The courier just texted, he's backstage. On the screen, Callista continued. And to all my followers who donated to help my sister rebuild, know this, your love is making miracles. At that exact moment, a young staffer in a black vest stepped onto the stage, interrupting Callista mid-sentence. The room still. The staffer handed over a sealed manila envelope. Callista blinked. The live stream camera didn't cut. She gave a tight smile. Oh, probably press materials. She cracked the envelope open. Her smile faded. She pulled out the first page, bold black letters across the top. Cease and desist order. A gasp rippled through the ballroom. Then the screens behind her flickered. Rowena whispered, cue it. On cue, Elsie pressed a key. The slideshow behind Callista, previously rolling photos of smiling children rehab centers and spiritual quotes, suddenly glitched and chained. A screenshot filled the screen. Callista's message to a friend. Let her rot in that dump. I gave them the GoFundMe link for PR. Cry for me, baby. Another image appeared. A draft caption Callista had typed. My sister is too unstable to manage the funds. It's better I handle it and just don't tell her. The crowd stirred, whispers, murmurs, phones lifted recording. Hashtags began flooding the chat. Let her rot leaks. Hashtag Callista exposed. Fake charity queen. Then, a silent clip played Callista walking around Rowena's kitchen during a live stream, setting up props, rehearsing lines, giggling between takes. This part needs to look sadder. Can you tilt the camera lower? Show more floor cracks. Callista stood frozen. In the back row, Aunt Corinne slowly rose from her seat. She had been invited to speak as part of the scheduled program, but she hadn't planned to go off script, Not until now. She walked calmly to the podium. I was asked to talk about family. She began, her voice low but resolute. About resilience, about healing. She looked out into the crowd. But there is no healing without truth. A pause. The ballroom was pin-drop silent. For too long, she continued, her voice gaining power. This family has erased the wrong daughter. She gestured toward the camera. Rowena Moore is not a tragedy. She is the reason this family hasn't completely rotted from the inside out. Gasps, then a smattering of applause. Aunt Corinne stepped off the stage and walked down the aisle. She looked straight into the lens of the live stream camera. Some people don't just survive being erased, they write themselves back in. And then she turned. At the rear of the ballroom, Rowena had just arrived. No fanfare, no lights, just her. Aunt Corinne walked up and wrapped her arms around her tight, proud, unshaken. The flashes started. Callista stood on the stage, breathing unevenly. She grabbed the mic. This is all twisted. You don't understand the pressure I've been under. But no one was listening. She turned and fled the stage, her gown catching on the corner of the podium. She stumbled, caught herself, and disappeared into the hallway. The stream ended. Back in the quiet of her home, Rowena sat back down, the same laptop in front of her. A new email pinged into her inbox from Skyline HOA President. Subject: concerning grant applications submitted under your name. Body Callista Moore's name appears on multiple funding requests that list you as a displaced beneficiary or include forged statements. Would you be open to a formal investigation? Rowena stared at the message. She didn't smile. She just exhaled. Not revenge, not rage, just gravity finding balance. And finally, the silence beginning to work in her favor. The early morning light spilled gently across the warped floorboards, stretching through the windows of the little $900 house that once stood as a punchline. The same windows that had been boarded up, whose sills had rotted in silence, now framed soft curtains fluttering against the spring breeze. Rowena cradled her chipped mug of coffee, elbows resting on the windowsill, her breath steady, her pulse unhurried. Then her phone buzzed. Just once, a quiet notification. She turned it over. Callista, hey, can we crash with you for a while? Just until things settle down. No apology, no context, just the presumption of access. The idea that even after everything, the door might still be open. Rowena stared at the message. She didn't reply, not yet. Outside the sidewalk, chalk still lingered from yesterday's community cleanup. Bright drawings of hearts, crooked suns, and messages like, "You matter," and "Stronger than you know." Neighbors had brought lemonade brownies and stories. Children had asked her if they could paint the old fence next week. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like she was being tolerated. She felt seen. She took a sip of coffee and scrolled again. Missed call. Mom voicemail. Rowena, honey, things happen, but family finds a way back. Don't be so stubborn. Your sister's been through a lot. We all have. You know, you were always the stronger one. That line again. The bigger person, the stronger one. The peacekeeper, the silent one. She closed her eyes, then opened them, looking out over the tiny yard where sunlight made the dewdrops on the grass look like glitter. Aunt Corinne had dropped by earlier that week with a pie and a framed photo of Rowena at 8 years old in a crumpled paper crown and dollar-store tinsel sash. That light was always yours, she said simply. That light was still hers, not to be borrowed, not to be filmed, marketed, or harvested for sympathy. Callista's text still sat there glowing like bait. Rowena walked to the front door, opened the screen, and stood a moment on the porch. The boards no longer creaked. They were firm now, replaced with donated lumber from Mr. Ortega down the street and sanded smooth by her own hands. She pulled a small black marker from her pocket and wrote with quiet care just above the brass handle. There's no space for lies here anymore. I wish you peace. She didn't send the words as a message. She didn't need to. They belonged here. Inside the table held piles of paperwork, neatly stacked in folders marked with colored tabs. Elsie had said they were almost done. The investigation was in motion. The cease and desist had been delivered. The HOA board had launched its review. Callista's sponsors had pulled funding. Her PayPal had been flagged, and the GoFundMe had been frozen pending fraud claims. The silence from her side wasn't confusion. It was strategy unraveling. But Rowena wasn't waiting for justice to come in headlines. She was building something steadier. By afternoon, she was in the backyard sanding the last bit of railing near the porch steps when a neighborhood teen dropped off a handwritten note. "You make this block feel safer, thank you." No one had ever thanked her for just being somewhere before. The next morning, she posted a short blog update. Healing isn't loud. Sometimes it's just choosing to be alone without being lonely. Sometimes it's not replying to texts that don't deserve responses. Sometimes it's building a home that protects your peace, and that's enough. That post got more shares than any of her sister's curated reels. The final message from Callista came a week later. "Guess we all make mistakes. Hope you enjoy your little cottage. Just remember who made you known." Rowena smiled faintly. Not bitter, not bruised, just done. She didn't reply. Instead, she walked to the door, ran her fingers over the marker lines, now faded a little under rain and sun, and whispered, "They wanted a key, but I built a door." And behind it finally was a life that belonged to her, not inherited, not borrowed, not begged for or built. And she stepped back inside, where peace didn't need permission to stay. Rowena's story is not just about betrayal. It's about rebuilding boundary setting and reclaiming the space that was always hers. From being erased by her own family to quietly documenting the truth, Rowena shows us that justice doesn't always roar. It often moves with calm resolve. Her choice to renovate a crumbling $900 house rather than fund her sister's retreat wasn't just financial. It was emotional. It was the first brick in a home that belonged to her, built not from validation, but from self-worth. What struck me most is how she didn't retaliate with loud vengeance, but with quiet truth and legal clarity. She didn't need revenge to be loud, to be powerful. She simply held the line. And when her family came back, not with apologies, but with expectation, she answered not with bitterness, but with clarity. There's no space for lies here anymore. From this story, we learn that peace isn't given, it's claimed. And sometimes building your own door is the most powerful act of liberation. If this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of your own journey, don't forget to like, comment with your thoughts, or share your own experiences below. And if you'd love more stories about quiet strength, emotional resilience, and poetic justice, subscribe to the channel for weekly episodes. This is Soft Power Revenge, where the silence speaks louder than noise.